All right, so good morning, everybody. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we're really excited this May because all month long we are celebrating biodiversity. We are showcasing animals, amazing creatures from around the world. We just had our 5th class join us. Hi, guys. I'll come in with you in just a second. So right now we've got 5 classes now joining us from across North America, including a new class, which is really exciting. So I want to give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out. We've got Miss Wertheim's grade 2s from Asheville, North Carolina. Hi, guys. Hey. We've got Miss Keogh's 2 3s in Tweed in Ontario. Hi, guys. Hi. Hey. We've got Miss Meeker's grade 2s in Freehold in New Jersey. Hi, guys. We've got Miss Johns' group, whose audio is unfortunately not working, but they're excited. Grade 5s in Enrico, Virginia. Hi, guys. And last but not least, just joining us a second ago, we've got Mr. Henstridge's grade 5s in Sundridge, Ontario. Hi, guys. Hi. Awesome. I'm going to keep you guys muted throughout the presentation, but you can make sure to join in. We'll do Q&A at the end. Of course, the reason you guys are all here is for our speakers. So we are joined live by Teresa at the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Florida. They are all about rescuing, rehabilitating, and re-releasing injured sea turtles. They're an active hospital. They're an amazing facility. They're our longest lasting partner, and it's always a thrill to get to share the joy of turtles with so many kids. So without further ado, thank you so much for joining us, Teresa, and take it away.
It's great to be here. So we're going to start with this big guy. This is Mr. T. He's one of our larger turtles. He's about a 200-pound loggerhead. And so the loggerheads get their name because they have a really, really big head. And so Mr. T came in back in the middle of February. He was found floating, and he also had a fish hook stuck in his mouth. But the fish hook wasn't his biggest problem. Turns out he had a lung infection. So that's why he was floating, and one lung was working better than the other lung. So after a couple months of antibiotics and medications, he's no longer floating, doing awesome, and he'll actually be released this upcoming Tuesday. So really, really exciting, because that's kind of our goal here, is to rescue and rehabilitate and release as many of these turtles as we can. And every year we typically get in about 100 turtles. But he'll be released on Tuesday, and he has been tagged. So he's got a little silver tag on the backside of each front flipper called flipper tags. And he also has a little microchip in the back of his neck. So that way, if he happens to pop up somewhere else throughout the entire world, we do know who he is and where he came from. But for him, we're also going to attach a satellite tag. So it's a GPS tracker that will glue to the outside of his shell. So we'll actually be able to track and see where he goes. And once we get that information, we'll post it up like on our website and on our Facebook page. Because we don't get to do the satellite tags very often because they're a little bit more expensive and the tag itself is a lot larger. So you can only do it on these larger turtles. So he's got just a few more days and then he gets to go home. And that's kind of what we always try to do, but it always depends on what's wrong with the turtle as to how long they need to stay. So like Mr. T has been here since beginning of February, so it's been a few months. Whereas some turtles, like this is Teddy. Teddy's about a 140-pound green sea turtle, which they're called the green turtles, but they're not actually green, but they eat the green stuff. They're herbivores. They eat plants. So all that green stuff turns their fat and their insides green. But Miss Teddy came in just about a month ago. He currently has a lung infection. So how Teddy is currently floating, that's what Mr. T used to be like. He used to be floating. So floating, not normal in the wild. That's how we know that something is wrong. But he also has a tendency to float kind of sideways, kind of lopsided, because one lung working better than the other lung. So to kind of help him out, we've got a row of Velcro down his right side there, some little foam blocks, sort of like floaties. So that way when he is sideways, we can attach some few more blocks, help level him out just a little bit. And the Velcro is nice because we can move them around depending on how he's floating for the day. But he just needs time for the medications to kind of work through his system and clear up that lung infection, clear up that pneumonia. So until then, he just kind of sleeps a lot. They're kind of like us. When we get sick, we get very weak and tired, and we just want to sleep all day. Well, same thing for them. And then once they start feeling better, that's when they start getting more and more active. Like one of our little greens. This is Dill. So back in the middle of March, about a month and a half ago, we got in 22 of these little juvenile greens that had stranded further north in Florida. And so there's about 15 different facilities throughout the entire state of Florida that can take sea turtles. But we all kind of cover our own areas. But they got in, I think, like 50 or 60 turtles over the course of just a couple weeks, which is a lot of turtles, and they couldn't handle everybody. So we got 22 of them. So turtles that were just very weak, very lethargic. They also had lots of growth, so lots of algae and barnacles on their shell. So that's why his shell looks kind of patchy. So it just needs a chance to heal. He needs a chance to rest. So he's doing better. He's a little bit more active now, but he still needs time. Probably still take a couple months. And then when it is time for him to be released, he'll go back up to where he was found. We always try to release them close to where they're found, if that's possible. But one of the biggest problems that we see are tumors. So like this guy, this is Daredevil. He's got tumors. That's what those little growths are on his neck and his flippers. He just had surgery last week, and we removed the tumors off of his eyes. So his eyes are healing, which is a good thing because his eye tumors were massive. So we were very lucky that we were able to remove them and that he is able to see. So right now he's just kind of recuperating. But those tumors, it's caused by a virus called fibropapilloma. We call it FP for short. But you can't remove all of them at once. So you just remove a few tumors at a time, let the turtle recuperate for a few weeks, and then we do surgery again. So he'll get there, but he just has a lot of tumors, so it's just going to take a little bit of time. But those tumors are linked to water pollution. That's why we always have to be very, very careful with what ends up in the water. It's not just the big things that they can eat or get entangled in. Because we see a lot of turtles every year. But that's because we're in Florida, the south end of Florida, so it stays pretty warm down here all year round, and we are surrounded by ocean. And so it's actually how we get most of our turtles is from the boaters and the fishermen, so the people that are out there on the water. So they see a turtle that doesn't look normal. And so they call us. We have an ambulance. We'll go pick the turtle up. And then as a thank you for them rescuing that turtle, then they get to name it. That's why sometimes our turtles have some very interesting names. So we've got one of them. We've got Junior hanging out right here. He's another green. The greens are the more common species that we get. But little Junior came in entangled in fishing line. But it was entangled on his left front flipper for so long and so tight that by the time that he came in, it had cut off the circulation. His flipper was dead. It was necrotic. It was not pretty. Didn't smell too good. So we actually had to amputate his left front flipper. But that's okay. He'll still be able to be released. He'll always look a little bit different. Think of a three-legged dog. But still be able to do everything that a normal turtle does. Just has to learn how to adapt. So for right now, he's still just healing. So once he heals up a little bit more, then we'll transfer him to one of our larger tanks and kind of give him some more space to swim. But he seems to be doing pretty good so far. But each turtle's a little bit different. Like you never know what you're going to get. About a month ago, we got in Capri. Now, he's not from Florida. He was actually found in St. Thomas, down on the Virgin Islands, because he had gotten attacked by a predator. We're assuming it was a shark, but kind of hard to tell. He can't exactly tell us. But his wounds look like a predator attack. But there's no turtle hospital in St. Thomas. So they didn't have any way to take care of him. And his wounds were a little bit too severe for just the regular vet to take care of. They don't take care of too many sea turtles down there. So we got him flown over here to us. And so he does have a little bit of damage to that right front flipper. It is healing, which is pretty impressive, because when he first came in, we thought we might need to amputate that flipper because of the damage, but it has been responding to treatments. So very good sign, but he has to heal up a little bit more. And then once he is completely healthy, then he'll go back to St. Thomas. But he's kind of cool because his name is Khepri, who is one of the Egyptian gods, whose kind of symbol was the scarab beetle. And he got that name because the little scoots on the top of his head look like a little scarab, the way they kind of form together, which is always kind of fun. Because their patterns on their shell and their heads, they are unique. So you won't ever find two turtles that look exactly the same. But you can't use the patterns on their shell like a fingerprint. You can't use it for identification, because as these turtles grow up, as they get larger, that pattern is going to warp, it's going to change. They'll still be pretty, just be a different kind of pretty. He's coming up. Let's see if I can get him. But he's doing pretty good. But depending on where the turtle is and what's available, sometimes we do get these transfers. A few years ago, we got in a turtle from St. Croix. But for the most part, most of our turtles come from right around the Florida Keys, because there's lots of turtles down here. There's lots and lots of ocean. And currently, we do have 60, well, I guess we have 67 now. We just got in one last night. Little shark bite turtle. So most of them are the patients, the ones that are currently sick that we're trying to get better. Then once they get healthy, then they get to be released. We've got some like these little greens that we're trying to get ready to be released, because these guys came in with tumors and they're tumor-free now. They've been tumor-free for a little while, but we still want to keep an eye on them, make sure that those tumors aren't going to come back, make sure that they are ready. But they don't have to be in a little tank for that. They can be in the slightly bigger area. But the big pool here is for the turtles that we cannot release. So the ones that healed up from their injuries, but did so in such a way that they cannot survive on their own in the wild. So they have to stay in captivity. And so that's why they get this nice big pool, because it is connected directly to the ocean. So it is tidal, and there's fish. So it's pretty much as natural a pool as you can make, just without the boats and the sharks and the things that can harm them. But most of them are non-releasable because they have what we call bubble butt syndrome. And so, like big guy here, that's Bowie. She's got bubble butt. And so bubble butt syndrome is what happens when they get hit by a boat and afterwards they float. So in some cases, it does seem to be air that gets trapped underneath their shell, but in a lot of cases, it also seems to be nerve damage as well, because their spine is located right along the inside of their shell. So that boat strike damages that spine, damages those nerves, causes paralysis, causes all sorts of problems. So floating in the wild, not normal. So they get to stay here. But to help them out, we attach lead weight to the outside of their shells. So that's why, like little Bernie, she's got a gray circle on her butt. That's a weight. So that way, when she wants to, she can go down to the bottom and go to sleep. It's just that eventually the weights fall off. So then they're back to floating. So even with the weights, they still cannot be released. And so some of these turtles will always stay here. We've got 5 of them that will always stay here. Those are the 5 that you can adopt. Doesn't mean you get to take them home. It's adoption in name only. But the rest of these guys will eventually end up at zoos or aquariums, because it is the only way for a zoo or an aquarium to get a sea turtle, because they are an endangered species. You can't just go out into the ocean and take a turtle because you want one. But the original bubble butt just popped up. He's this guy here on the end, the really deformed shell with that gray oval on his butt. That's the original bubble butt. So he is our longest resident. He has been here since 1989. So he's kind of the one that started it all. And then Montel, right there behind bubble butt, he's one of the ones that does not have bubble butt. He's had pretty much everything else. So Montel's been hit by a boat, bit by a shark, entangled in fishing line, and he's had tumors. So had a rough life. So he's missing half of his right front flipper, all of his left front flipper, his right eye, and his shell is dented on his left side. So in order to be released, sea turtle needs 3 full functioning flippers. That's why turtles like Junior, who's only missing 1, can still be released, but turtles like Montel, who's missing 2.5 flippers, and he only has 2.5 flippers, and he only has 1 eye, so cannot be released. It's not very fast, but he's faster than you expect. All of a sudden you look and he's on the other side of the pool. But just not fast enough to be released. Because sea turtles, they can be fast when they want to be. They can do bursts of speed up to about 30 miles an hour. They can't maintain that speed, but they can do bursts of speed. They're only slow when they want to be. They're kind of like us. You can run really fast, but you're not going every day at a flat-out run. So, makes it kind of fun. But that's why these guys all live in here. And sea turtles, they are solitary in the wild. So they don't travel in groups. So like the movie Finding Nemo, got that part wrong. In that they don't meet their parents. They don't go traveling the currents together. So when they are sick and we need to keep them by themselves, they're okay with that. They're used to being by themselves. They don't get lonely. And that's why even when you do put them together like these guys, they don't care. They just ignore each other. But they're not typically mean. But then over here, we've got one of our little guys. So this is Henry. He's about 1.5 years, maybe 2-year-old green. He's only about 4 pounds. So he's pretty tiny. Just a little bit bigger than my hand. He came in a month ago. He was being attacked by a shark. Well, actually a couple of sharks. So little Henry is actually very, very lucky. So he was found by a couple on their boat. They were fishing. So they kind of saw this commotion in the water and they go closer and they realize that this little shark is being kind of surrounded and attacked by like 2 or 3 lemon sharks. So they felt bad. They moved the boat up closer and were able to scare the sharks away and kind of reach down, pluck little Henry out of the water. So Henry is all kind of cut and scraped up from the sharks, but he's still alive. Didn't lose any flippers. So he just needs a chance to heal. Because sharks do eat turtles. Like it's part of one of the turtle's natural predators. But what sea turtles do when they're getting attacked by a shark is they'll twist and they'll turn. They'll keep their back or their belly to the shark because it's a lot harder for the shark to bite them. So think about trying to pinch your hand. You can pinch the side of your hand very easily, but you try to pinch the palm of your hand, it's a lot more difficult. So little Henry, he's got little scratches all over his back. He's got scratches all over his belly. But he does have a couple of deep ones on his underside, right up underneath his front flippers. So he just needs a chance to heal. But they didn't severely damage the muscles or the tendons or anything, so they will be able to heal. He will be able to be released. It's probably going to take at least another month, maybe a month and a half. to do so. But for right now, he just not a big fan of using that front flipper, especially his left one, because it hurts. If you got attacked by a shark, you'd be in a lot of pain too. So he just kind of needs a chance for that to heal and for him to kind of rest up. Just like if you got attacked by a shark, you wouldn't be bouncing out of bed the next day. So he's getting there. He just needs time. And then before we take questions, one more turtle. Because Cream of Tartar is a pretty awesome turtle. So this is Cream of Tartar, also right next to Time. So I told you about Little Dill, who was one of the 22 that got transferred to us from further north in Florida. Well, when we get a large group of turtles like this, what we'll typically do is kind of pick a category, so that way they get their names out of that category. So one time we did Gilligan's Island. So we ended up with Gilligan, Professor Marianne, Ginger, Skipper. Ended up with all of them. This time we decided herbs and spices. So we've got dill, cream of tartar, thyme. We also have wasabi, saffron, cinnamon, all sorts of fun stuff. But cream of tartar was kind of one of the worst cases because, like you saw, dill had just a few patches on his shell. Cream of tartar kind of about 80% of his shell, because when Cream of Tartar came in, that's what he looked like. Trying to get you without this shadow. So he was just covered in barnacles. So when he came in with all those barnacles, he'd weighed 15 pounds. When we removed those barnacles, he lost a couple pounds. So it caused a lot of damage to his shell, and he was so malnourished and so skinny that he had a kind of a hard road. So he is finally eating on his own. He is doing amazing, but it's just going to take time for his shell to heal, because the shell itself is bone, so it does heal, never fully regenerate, but it does heal. But the outer layer of their shell is a keratin layer, so just like your fingernails. So that's what most of the damage happened, was to that outer keratin layer. It kind of came off. So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like ripping off a fingernail. It hurts, and it will grow back, but it's just going to take time. And until it does so, it's just going to be very sore and very tender, very sensitive. So he's got special medication on his back to help protect it from the sun and to make sure it doesn't get an infection, but to also kind of protect it so that way if he does kind of knock it up against something, it's not going to hurt. But he is doing so much better than when he first came in that now we're actually cautiously optimistic that he will be able to be released. When he first came in, we weren't sure if he was going to make it. So we always like these cases when the turtles surprise us, because they're pretty hardy animals. A lot of times they are able to heal from things that we don't always think they will. So turtles like Cream of Tartar, even Montel, sometimes they've had some rough lives. Okay, questions?
Well, first of all, we're so happy that you guys are there to take care of them when they do have rough lives. So thank you so much for that, Teresa. We had a class join us on screen here, and then we have two classes, Miss Pittman and Miss Lindsay's class, watching on YouTube as well. So feel free to type any questions there. But yeah, let's dive right in, guys. Miss Wertheim's class, if you guys have a question to kick us off in Asheville, go right ahead. So many hands up. Okay.
Wait, go up to the
Take your time. There you go.
My question is, how do they put the sea turtles on the boat?
How do they get the sea turtles on the boat? Good question.
Well, that kind of depends on the size of the turtle. So turtles like Henry was pretty easy. Henry's only 4 pounds. So nice and easy to pick up and kind of hold on to. The sharks made it a little difficult for Henry, but the turtle itself was fine. Now turtles like Mr. T and Teddy, so turtles that are over 100 pounds, then it's not always nearly as simple. So in those cases, what we'll actually do is we'll call Fish and Wildlife or the Coast Guard they'll go out on one of their boats. Sometimes we'll go be on the boat with them, because in those cases, you just need more people. So more people to kind of reach down and lift, because luckily when sea turtles, when they are sick, they're pretty weak and tired. So they don't swim around too much. They're not going to like dive down and disappear. So they're going to kind of stay up at the top and make it just a little bit easier. But yeah, it's still a lot of weight.
Great answer. All right. Let's go to Miss Keogh's class. If you guys have a question, come on up.
Yay. Okay, Carson.
Does the hospital help land turtles too?
Well, we only take care of sea turtles.
Yeah.
Because the Keys, it's a string of islands, a little bit more than 100 miles long. So we don't have a lot of land. We have a lot more ocean than we do land, so we don't have that many land turtles. And the few little box turtles that we have, if they do get injured, they go to the local vet office. They don't have to come to us. But the sea turtles, they need a little bit more special of a facility. They can't just go to the local vet office. So that's why they come to us.
Perfect. All right, Miss Meeker's class, if you guys have a question, come on up. Yep, you're good.
What is the most common thing that turtles are hurt by, and how can we help them?
Well, most common is people. Like most of the injuries that we see are human related. Like we don't get too many like little Henry that are like shark bite or completely natural. So in a lot of cases, it's just people. So it's just being aware. So that way, like, you don't litter. You recycle as much as you can. Because if that stuff just ends up on the ground or in the environment, it's going to end up in the ocean, in the water eventually. These turtles will eat it or get entangled in it. And even things that you may not think about all the time, things like balloons. Because if you let a balloon go into the air, it has to come down eventually. And a lot of times it does that over the ocean. And think about it. Floating in the water, balloons look like jellyfish. Even things like plastic bags look like jellyfish. So they look like food. The turtles think that they're food. So then it makes them sick. So it's just being aware and realizing that just because you may not see it anymore doesn't mean that it just magically disappears. That it's going to end up somewhere.
Being careful with your waste is something that we come upon in a lot of sessions, so it's really great to have that message shared in this one too. Miss Johns' class, I know you guys are having trouble with your mic, so we're going to see if we can hear you. I don't think we can, in which case you can type in a question or pass it along in an email if you'd like, but let's see. Can we hear you? I don't think so. No? Okay, sorry guys. So try and type in a question. I'll come back to you guys in just a minute. Mr. Hendridge class, what? Do you guys have a question? Come on up.
Do you think global warming will affect sea turtles, and why?
Great question.
Well, sea turtles, yes, spend most of their lives in the ocean. That's why they've got flippers instead of feet, because they're built to swim. But they do have to come up onto land, onto the beach, to lay their eggs. And they typically always return to the same beach that they were hatched from to lay their eggs. So one of the concerns is that with global warming, with climate change, that with sea level rise, going to kind of wipe out the beaches. And if there's nowhere for these turtles to lay their eggs, then there's not going to be any babies. But something else is that sea turtles, whether they're boys or girls, depends on the temperature of the nest. So a warmer nest has more girls, cooler nest has more boys. Girls are hot, boys are cool. So one of the things that we are studying, and a lot of people are studying, is part of a long-term study figuring out how many boys and how many girls in the same area are kind of forming. Because if your population is all girls and there's not enough boys, that's not going to be good. You can't sustain a population that way. So far, we are seeing more and more females being born than boys. But it's part of a ongoing study. So we'll still kind of have to wait and see what happens.
Yep.
But yeah, there are a couple of concerns that we are concerned with.
Excellent answer. All right, Miss Johnson's class wanted to know, what do you do with the turtles when there's a hurricane? This is something that actually came up a couple of years ago. So I'd love to share the answer.
So yeah, being here in the Keys and being literally right directly on the ocean is not always a good thing for hurricanes. But luckily with hurricanes, we know when they're coming. So we can prepare. It's not like a tornado where it just comes out of nowhere. So with all of the turtles back here, all of these turtles get moved. So a year and a half ago, we had Hurricane Irma. So we were kind of expecting her to kind of hit the Keys, which she ended up doing. So it took us about a day and a half to move everybody from our back enclosure here. We've got a set of what we call hurricane tanks, built a little bit more up, a little bit closer to the middle of the island, and they're built higher. So that way they stay protected from the winds and from the storm surge. And we were very lucky with Irma. We didn't flood. We still got a lot of damage, but it was more wind debris related. But all the turtles were all fine. We were closed for about a month, and then we were able to move all the turtles back once we kind of got everything cleaned up and all of the pumps and everything back to working. But you just kind of always prepare for the worst, because the turtles, they know what to do. They know just to kind of hunker down at the bottom, because that's what they do out in the wild. So like this little guy, he's a little Kemps. He's just kind of sleeping at the bottom right now, which is what they're supposed to do. So that's kind of what they do during a hurricane, is they just kind of sit down on the bottom, stay underneath the water as much as possible. Because up at the surface, that's when you got the waves and the wind and all of that. But underneath, the water is still pretty calm. And when they are sleeping, they can hold their breath up to about 5 hours. So they can hold their breath a lot longer than we can.
Awesome. All right, our last class joining us on screen, just right before we began. So Mrs. Vicky's class, grade 3's Wrightstown, Wisconsin. If you guys have a question, come on up. Yeah, you're good.
How old can a turtle get? A sea turtle get?
Oh.
Well, their average lifespan's about 70 to 100 years. But they don't have growth rings like a tree, so you never know exactly how old they are. Just kind of your best guess as to their size. So like that is Brianna. So she's one of our non-releasable loggerheads. She's got bubble butt. She's about 150 pounds. She's by herself because she does not play well with others. She's a little feisty little girl, but she's about 150 pounds. So we're estimating about 15 to 25 years old. So still on the smaller side. Loggerheads will get to be about 400 pounds. But all sea turtles, they'll never stop growing. So when they start off, firstborn, they're only 2 to 3 inches long. Like this is little Neptune. He's a loggerhead. He's only a year and a half old. So he's a lot smaller. Whereas bigger turtle, older, and even as big as Brianna is, she's still going to get bigger because they never stop growing. Which just makes it fun to take care of them.
And difficult sometimes, I'm sure. But awesome. All right, so we got a few questions from groups online. So Ms. Lindy's class wants to know a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm going to share the first question, which is, why is Junior's name, or in general all turtles' names, written on their shell, and does that hurt them at all?
Well, we use a non-toxic paint pen to write on their shell, so it doesn't hurt them in any way. But it's a way for us to make sure that when they are patients, especially if we have turtles that look very similar, that we can write their name on their shell so that we can make sure that we are giving the correct medication to the correct turtle. Same reason why if you ever go to the hospital, you get a wristband with your name and all of your information on it.
That was a really quick one, so I want to ask another quick one from a group online, which is Ms. Lindsay's class again. Are humans allowed in the water with the turtles? Whether that's people or you guys, or how does that work?
Well, not here. Like the only people in the water with the turtles here is our rehab staff, because these are patients. So they are sick, and you don't want people messing with you when you're sick. And we also want to make sure that they stay wild. So that way when they do get released, that they're not going to like people. We want them to stay away from people. Little Neptune's going to get every last little bit of food. But sea turtles, they are in the wild. So if you're ever in a more tropical spot and you're out there snorkeling or diving or even swimming in the ocean, there's always the possibility of finding a sea turtle. They're kind of everywhere. But typically, they're more scared of you than you are of them. So typically, they see you, they swim away.
Yeah. I think that's something we hear about every single animal except polar bears, which come right at you. All right, we're ripping through these, so let's do a whole other round of questions, guys. We'll start with Miss Word Times class. You guys have a question? Come on up.
It's our.
Go for it, guys.
What happens if when turtles stay there, and what happens if they don't get out?
Well, some of the turtles will stay here. So like the turtles in the big part, so the turtles that are non-releasable, they will always stay here. But they're still wild animals. Like an adult sea turtle's brain is only about the size of a peanut. So it's not very big, but they don't need a very big brain. All of their knowledge is instinctive. So they're born knowing everything they ever need to know. So like we can raise sea turtles in captivity and still release them because they already know it all. They don't have to have a mom or dad to teach them what to do. But it also means that their brains aren't built to learn. So it's very hard to actually teach a sea turtle anything. So you can't exactly train them to do tricks.
Yeah. All right. Miss Johns' class, I'm going to come to you guys in a second, but you do have to type in your question, unfortunately, so just make sure to do that. Miss Keogh's class, come on up first, and you have a second question. Go for it, guys.
Okay. Yes, we do. Be clear. Do. Look at the camera. Do. The shells.
Do the show.
Have bones and
Have bones and blood in them.
Well, the shell is bone. So whereas mostly our bones are all inside, their shell is bone, so that's on the outside. But then they do have all of their bones like in their flippers and everywhere else. Those are the same bones in their flipper that we have in our hand, which is pretty amazing. But that's why turtles like cream of tartar and like dill and thyme, like these guys, why it is a little bit harder on them, because when that keratin layer, like that fingernail, comes off, then that bone is sometimes exposed, so then it just hurts. It's just very sore until that new keratin kind of comes in and heals. So it just needs time to do that.
Awesome. All right, we've got a great question written in from Miss Johns' class, and that is, how do you transfer a turtle from one sanctuary to another, from a sanctuary to a zoo? You mentioned giving them the zoo. How do you possibly get them there?
Well, it depends on where the new facility is. So like if it's within the state of Florida, like those little greens, they can be driven, but they can be transported dry. So they don't have to be in water, which is kind of a good thing because some of these turtles are big. That much water would be very heavy. But we rub them down with Vaseline so that way, even though they're out of the water, they're not going to get dehydrated or dried out. Like this little Kemp's here, well, it's still sleeping, still taking his nap. He actually came to us back in December from Cape Cod up in Massachusetts, New England, because he had gotten cold stunned. Because sea turtles, they are reptiles, they are cold-blooded, they get their body temperature based off of the water temperature. So if the water gets too cold, they get too cold. So when it's longer distances like this, then they get flown. And so kind of it depends on who's available. We've had turtles fly by FedEx. Little Kepri, the one that came from St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands, he was flown American Airlines. Sometimes they get flown by Coast Guard. But these little Kemps, we got 32 of them back in December. They were flown by a group. It's called Turtles Fly 2. It's a nonprofit volunteer group, and it's pilots who volunteer their time and their planes transferring turtles around the country and kind of wherever they need to go. So it kind of depends on how big the turtle is and where they need to go.
Outstanding. I love this image in my mind of like you go into an American Airlines plane and in first class there's like a turtle with some champagne, but I appreciate that. Ms. Zwicky's class, you guys are so enthusiastic. You typing in questions, but we'll come to you guys in just a second. You can say it live. You don't need to just type it. It's much better to actually say it. But for now, Ms. Henstridge class, if you guys have a second question, come on up.
What motivated you to help turtles?
Well, turtles are awesome. Everybody should help turtles. But most of us here have some sort of background in something science related, so biology, zoology, marine biology. But like I grew up on the coast of Florida, so I'd go to the beach every summer. I'd see all the turtle nests. And then as soon as I was old enough, I started volunteering and helping out with the sea turtle nesting. And then I kind of got obsessed with turtles. And that was kind of it. Our rehab staff are kind of the turtle nurses. Here they are kind of putting together breakfast and some medications. It smells all sorts of yummy. But they're kind of the same thing, and they typically have some sort of previous experience with turtles as well. So previous job, internship, volunteer. So each person gets here a little bit different, but we all get here because it's always different turtles. It's always different things. So they like to keep us on our toes.
Outstanding, Teresa. All right, we'll take one last question from our class. So Ms. Vicky's class, come on up and go for it, guys.
What kind of colors can sea turtles be?
Well, it depends on the type of turtle. So like these loggerheads, we're back to Mr. T, who's actually awake now. And you know that Mr. T is a boy, because now that he's awake, he's got his tail out. When they're younger, they look identical. You can't tell just by looking at them. But when they're adults, if they're a boy, they get that long tail. Whereas if he was a girl, tail would be really short, wouldn't go past the end of his shell. But loggerheads are typically kind of this orangish, reddish, brownish color. Because like Brianna was the same thing. Neptune was the same color. The greens are typically on the brownish side. But the greens are the ones that also typically have the very pretty patterns on their shell. Creek is really, really pretty. Creek is gorgeous. But those patterns help them because the greens eat plants. So they spend a lot of their times in seaweeds and seagrass beds. So just like tigers and leopards and cheetahs have stripes and spots to help them blend in, so do the turtles. But like the little Kemps that I showed you, when he grows up, he'll be almost white because the Kemps get to be known as the ghost turtles. And then like the leatherbacks, which we don't have any, the leatherbacks are the biggest of the turtles. They get to be up to about 2,000 pounds. They are black. So they're very, very distinctive, but they spend most of their lives a little bit further offshore. They like the deeper water. So the being black kind of helps them out because middle of the ocean, it's kind of dark.
Great answer. We covered the gamut. Teresa, before I ask you to wrap up, we have had a question written in like 3 or 4 times, so I want to cover it. We had so many questions written in. How many turtles have you saved in the last year?
A lot. Currently, we have 66.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. So like December, we got in 32 Kemps.
Wow.
So we only have 3 left. The rest of them have already all been released. And that's just with those guys. So in the past year, we've probably released like 60 or 70 turtles.
Outstanding. Way to go. Before we wrap up, is there a place where kids can learn more? They can ask more questions. They can learn more about the turtles you guys have and how you guys operate. Where do we guide the classes?
Well, you can go to our website. It's turtlehospital.org. It's super difficult. So we always keep our patients and everybody updated there. And like for Mr. T, when we get his satellite tag information, we'll post it there because we're still trying to figure out how we can figure out where he is, whether or not that'll be public or not. Otherwise, just any sort of updates saying, hey, yay, Mr. T got released. Here are some pictures. Or we'll post it like on our Facebook page. We try to keep that updated. And we're big fans of doing Facebook Lives. So when we have surgery or doing procedures, we like to let you guys see that.
Outstanding. I also want to note for our classes, the Turtle Hospital is a charity, so you guys can donate and help them take care of a lot of turtles. I know you're not going to mention that, Teresa, but I really want to for classes, so if you guys are keen, that's a great thing you guys can do. All right. Thank you so much. What we do at the end of every hangout for all our classes, I'm going to demute everyone's microphone. So, boys and girls, if you guys can get ready, every class is now muted. Join me in saying awesome, guys. Thank you so much to all our classes. Thanks for joining us for Biodiversity May. Teresa, always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.